In the early morning hours of July 31st, 2010, a small community in Sydney, Australia, awoke to news that would send ripples of shock and sorrow throughout the nation. Keisha Whitebeard, a 6-year-old girl with a bright smile and a kind heart, had vanished. Her mother, Christiane Abrahams, reported her missing from their Mount Druitt home, pleading for help in the search for her little girl. But behind the headlines and the tearful pleas lay a twisted truth, one that would slowly unravel and reveal the horrifying fate of young Keisha. This story is not just one of loss, it is one of betrayal. A mother's love is a bond most believed to be unwavering, a safe haven for any child. But in the case of Christiane Abrahams, that bond was shattered, leaving behind only a chilling reminder of the darkness that sometimes lurks behind closed doors. Christiane Abrahams did not have an easy life. Growing up in a troubled home, she faced challenges that most people would struggle to comprehend. Her early years were marked by turmoil, instability, and a fractured family dynamic. Christie's experiences shaped her worldview, leading her down a path of hardship and inner conflict. Those who knew her described her as someone struggling with inner demons, trapped in a cycle of unresolved trauma and anger that seemed to haunt her every step. By the time she was a young adult, Christie found herself drifting, searching for stability but often falling short of finding it. In an effort to find solace, she turned to relationships as a source of comfort, hoping they could fill the void left by her troubled past. It was during this period that she met Robert Smith, the man who would become Keisha's father. In Robert, Christie saw the potential for a new beginning, a chance to build the family she had always longed for. But as their relationship progressed, it became evident that the ghosts of her past would not be easily laid to rest. Though Christie's life was fraught with difficulty, there was still a part of her that yearned for love and family. It is this longing that might have made her vulnerable to unhealthy relationships, ones that would only deepen the emotional and psychological pain she carried. As the years went on, Christie's personal struggles compounded, leading her down a destructive path that would ultimately affect her daughter's life in ways that no one could have foreseen. Christie and Robert's relationship was, from the beginning, a turbulent one. Although they shared dreams of creating a stable home, reality often fell short of their aspirations. Christie's personal struggles and Robert's own challenges created an environment fraught with tension and conflict. When Keisha was born in 2004, the couple hoped that their daughter would be a beacon of light, a reason to strive for a better life. But parenting proved to be difficult for Christie and Robert. They found themselves overwhelmed by the demands of raising a child, and as time went on, cracks began to show. Reports from family members and neighbors hinted at troubling behavior, signs of neglect, and isolation. Keisha's early life was marked by uncertainty. The love and care that every child deserves seemed fleeting in her household. This unstable environment set the stage for the tragedies that would follow. Christie and Robert's relationship, strained from the outset, was marked by frequent arguments, financial instability, and an overall lack of support for one another. This environment had a profound impact on Keisha. As a child, she was caught in the crossfire of her parents' emotional turbulence. Without a strong foundation of love and care, her growth was stunted, and she began to retreat further into herself. Keisha's absence from school became more frequent. Her peers at school remembered her as a quiet and withdrawn child, someone who didn't speak much or interact with others. When she did attend, she would often appear tired and disheveled. Her teachers and classmates noticed the difference, though they didn't fully understand the gravity of the situation. Her innocence and vulnerability were obvious to those who observed her, and yet, the signs of neglect were not acted upon in time. From a young age, Keisha faced challenges that no child should ever endure. Described by family members as a sweet, shy girl, she struggled to find the warmth and safety that other children took for granted. Those who interacted with her noticed subtle signs that all was not well. Keisha often appeared withdrawn, and there were times when bruises were noticed on her body. When questioned, Christie and Robert would dismiss concerns, offering excuses that left uneasy feelings in those who cared about Keisha's well-being. Her isolation only grew as time went on. She rarely attended school consistently, and her interaction with people outside her immediate family dwindled. Relatives and neighbors became increasingly alarmed, but their concerns were often dismissed or met with hostility by Christie. For Keisha, home was not the safe sanctuary it should have been. Instead, it became a place of uncertainty and fear. At times, Keisha's sadness and reluctance to speak about her home life led to suspicions of mistreatment. Teachers and social workers alike struggled to intervene, often finding their attempts to reach out blocked by Christy. Her defensiveness and refusal to acknowledge the issues in her home life created barriers that few could break through. It is believed that Christy herself may have suffered from untreated psychological issues, which played a significant role in her ability to care for her daughter. Though some family members tried to intervene, their efforts were undermined by Christy's determination to present an image of a normal family. To outsiders, the Abrahams' family seemed ordinary, hiding the deep secrets and dysfunction that plagued their home. For Keisha, the love she so desperately needed was not forthcoming. On July 31, 2010, Keisha's life was cut short in a night that remains shrouded in horror. According to later court testimony, an altercation between Christy and Keisha led to a violent outcome. Christy, fueled by anger and frustration, struck her daughter, an act that would prove fatal. Instead of seeking help, Christy made a decision that would forever mark her as a figure of infamy. She and Robert did not report Keisha's death but instead tried to conceal what had happened. Christy's actions that night were driven by a complex mix of anger, desperation, and deep-seated emotional issues. It is believed that Christy felt overwhelmed by her role as a mother and unable to meet the demands of her child, leading her to lash out in violence. This moment of rage would prove to be the point of no return, as it took only a single act of brutality to end Keisha's young life. In the days following the incident, the couple hid Keisha's body, planning to cover up their crime. They wrapped her in a blanket, placed her in a suitcase, and hid her in bushland near their home. They then prepared themselves to tell a tale of a missing child, hoping to evade suspicion and responsibility for what they had done. On August 1, 2010, Christy Abrahams called the police to report Keisha missing. She claimed that her daughter had been in bed the night before and had vanished by morning. The police responded immediately, launching a massive search effort that involved local volunteers, law enforcement, and media appeals. Christy appeared on television, tearfully pleading for Keisha's return. Her emotional display tugged at the public's heartstrings, and people rallied behind her, hoping that Keisha would be found safe. But as the investigation progressed, cracks in Christy's story began to appear. Detectives noted inconsistencies in her statements, and evidence began to suggest that Keisha's disappearance was not as straightforward as it seemed. Friends and relatives expressed doubts, pointing to past incidents and raising concerns about the home environment Keisha had lived in. As the investigation intensified, the truth became harder for Christy and Robert to hide. The police, unable to ignore mounting suspicion, began to dig deeper. They analyzed Christy's behavior and interactions with the media, noting a lack of genuine emotion and an unsettling sense of calm. What was supposed to be a mother's frantic search for her child began to feel more like a performance. The search for Keisha was on, but the question on everyone's mind was no longer where she was, it was, who was responsible for her disappearance. After months of searching, investigators finally uncovered the dark truth. Forensic evidence, combined with psychological assessments of Christy's behavior, pointed to foul play. It was eventually revealed that Keisha's body had been hidden in a remote area, a tragic end to the life of an innocent child. The community was devastated. Vigils were held, flowers and toys were left in Keisha's memory, and the outpouring of grief was palpable. Christy and Robert's attempt to deceive the public had only deepened the community's sense of betrayal. The revelation of their involvement in Keisha's death left people grappling with disbelief and anger. How could a mother do this to her own child? The question lingered, and the community braced itself for the legal proceedings that would follow. The discovery of Keisha's body brought with it an overwhelming sense of closure, but it also highlighted just how deeply the justice system had been deceived. Christy's calculated behavior during the investigation only added to the magnitude of the betrayal. The trauma of losing Keisha was now compounded by the realization that her mother had been the one to take her life. In court, the details of Keisha's death were laid bare. The prosecution presented evidence that painted a chilling picture of abuse, neglect, and a complete disregard for Keisha's life. Witnesses testified about the physical and emotional abuse Keisha had endured, and experts provided insight into Christie's psychological state. Christie's defense argued that her troubled past had contributed to her actions, but the jury was unmoved. In a powerful moment, the judge addressed Christie directly, condemning her actions and expressing the gravity of the crime she had committed. Christie Abrahams was sentenced to a lengthy prison term, a measure of justice for Keisha's tragic death. Robert Smith also faced charges, though his involvement was portrayed as secondary to Christie's actions. The sentencing brought a sense of closure, but the scars left behind would not easily fade. The case of Christie Ann Abrahams raised questions about the psychological factors that contributed to her actions. Experts who examined her described a woman tormented by inner conflict, shaped by a troubled past and deeply unresolved trauma. While these factors did not excuse her actions, they offered insight into the mindset of a woman who had lost her way, unable to break free from the cycle of anger and violence that had defined her life. Forensic psychologists noted that Christie's behavior fit the profile of individuals with deep-seated issues of control, resentment, and emotional instability. In her mind, Keisha may have represented a reminder of her own failings, leading her to project her frustrations onto the child. Yet these psychological explanations could not undo the harm she had caused. The impact of Keisha's death rippled through her family and community. Extended family members, who had voiced concerns but felt powerless to intervene, were left grappling with guilt and sorrow. The community, too, mourned the loss of a young life cut short by senseless violence. Memorials were held in Keisha's honor, and community members worked together to raise awareness about child abuse, vowing to protect children who might be in similar situations. For those who had tried to help Keisha, the pain of losing her was a constant reminder of the importance of vigilance and advocacy. Keisha's life, though brief, became a catalyst for change, inspiring others to speak up for vulnerable children and work toward a future where no child has to suffer in silence. The story of Christie Ann Abrahams and her daughter Keisha is one of tragedy and betrayal, but it also serves as a call to action. Keisha's memory lives on in the hearts of those who knew her and in the community that has vowed never to forget. In the end, her story reminds us of the importance of compassion, the duty to protect the innocent, and the need to confront the darkness that sometimes resides in the most unexpected places. Through Keisha's short and painful life, the world was forced to confront the uncomfortable truths of abuse, neglect, and the devastating consequences of an unchecked cycle of violence. Her story may have been cut short, but the lessons it imparts will resonate for years to come.